So this week for the NCTE Poetry Award, I chose the book Before She Was Harriet. Um, I always enjoyed learning about Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad and just, how slaves would escape to freedom. And so this book really stood out to me, and I was really excited to read it. And so this book is by Lisa Klein Ransom, and it's illustrated by James E. Ransom. It's for ages 4 to 8 years, and there's 32 pages, and it is a bibliography. So through this story, it's obviously in poetry format, and so each page has a photo of Harriet and the stage of her life she was in, and so I found that really cool and just eye-opening, to put she has titles of what she was throughout her life, and along with them, the author has pictures of Harriet in that time of her life. And so throughout this book, it just discusses all the things that Harriet was before. The first page says that she's old and achy, and it goes on to say before she was old and achy, she was all of these things. And so before being old and achy, she was a suffragist, fighting for women's rights, and then after that before that she was General Tubman, and then she was helping people be led to freedom, and then before that she was a Union spy carrying secrets across the battlefield to help Abraham Lincoln end slavery, and then before that she was a nurse caring for those who were hurt during the Civil War, and then before that she's labeled as Aunt Harriet and helped her parents escape their slave owner. And then before that she was Moses, leading and traveling to freedom, helping people through the Underground Railroad and leading them to freedom and escaping their owners. And then before that she was Minty in Maryland, who was owned by one slave owner who broke her back but couldn't break her spirit. And then before that she was Araminta, and at that stage in her life she was taught by her father how to read the woods and the stars at night to be able to be ready for the next morning and the day. And so she would go on to leave behind slavery and pick a new name, which is Harriet, and she would go on to just remember all of the times throughout her life that she was all of the things that gave her purpose and meaning before she was old and achy and free. So at the end of the book, it just goes on to say, and now she is old and achy and free. Most importantly, they just, emphasize that word. And so my personal response to the story, this was a great book, and I was excited to read it. And when we learned about the Underground Railroad and Harriet Tubman through grade school, they never really talk about what she did before that. It's always, she just helped lead slaves to freedom, and that's what we really focus on. So it was really cool to read all these things that she was before that I didn't even know about, and she truly is just an outstanding and amazing woman who I think it's so important to learn about her and just tie her into, the Civil War and Underground Railroad and slavery. And so I just think it's really important that kids would read this book, not only because it's, child friendly, not only with illustrations, but because it's easy to understand, and you get to read all the titles that she was before she was Harriet Tubman. And so I think it's just great that it shows how she fought for women's rights and along with fighting for slavery. And so I really think that kids could pull a lot of things out of this, whether it be just learning about Harriet Tubman's life or learning about how strong someone can really be, mentally and physically, to just push through all of the things that she did. And so the strategy or activity that I would like to do with this book, I just think that this is a great parallel when talking about the Civil War or slavery, or both of them. And so I would want to print off a map of the United States and then research, the paths that they would take when she was helping slaves escape to freedom, and just trace those paths all the way, up to Canada, or just what states they went through. And then I would just like to research, what the weather was like. Did they travel through rivers? Because, you read about how they were being followed by or tracked by dogs, but how they would, get into water so that they would kind of lose the scent. And I would want the kids to really understand how tiring and how awful of a process it really was, and what slaves actually went through, and what Harriet Tubman actually did for them. And so I just think that it would be really important to just circle that back to the Underground Railroad, and then have a map of all of the paths that they took and how amazing and incredible it really is. So I really enjoyed this book this week, and I'm glad that I got the opportunity to read it and hopefully put it on my shelf in my future classroom.